Welcome to another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I'm the founder of Teach the Geek. It's an online platform for science and engineering professionals. I'm also the creator of the online public speaking course called Teach the Geek to Speak. And you can learn about it at teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Today, my guest is Dr. Moriba Jah. He is an astrophysicist and he has his own Wikipedia page. And he's the first guest I've spoken to that I can say that for. He's also a professor and he's a founder. When I think about astrophysics, I think about that show, The Big Bang Theory, but I don't think of any of those main characters as public speakers, but Dr. Jah is that too. He's even a TED fellow. So I'm really interested to learn more about his journey in astrophysics, how he became a founder, and the ways in which public speaking has benefited him. Welcome to the Teach the Geek interviews, Moriba.
Hey, look, thank you so much for having me, Neil.
So from the bit of research I did on you, I saw that you got degrees in aerospace engineering. What motivated you to get that degree?
Well, interestingly enough, it started off after high school. I enlisted in the US Air Force, and it was my job to be a security guard, basically, for nuclear missiles in Montana. And it was the first time in my life that I'd been in a place with really dark skies. I grew up in Caracas, Venezuela, city with lots of lights and that sort of stuff. And on a good night, maybe you could see the moon. But when I was in Montana at night, I mean, I looked up at the sky and it was like peppered with, galaxies, stars, like all this stuff. And it was a very moving moment for me because I didn't realize that the universe was really so populated. And during these night shifts, I'd see these dots of light go by that were not meteors and they weren't planes. And when I started chasing down, like, what were these things? It turns out that these things were human-made objects orbiting the Earth that were reflecting sunlight. And I could see these things with my naked eye. And that was like, wow, I mean, I'm like, that is really cool. And I want to know more about that. So I studied aerospace engineering. I focused on astrodynamics, which is the science that studies motion of stuff in space.
Oh, nice. But then you didn't stop with just an undergraduate degree. You went on and got masters and PhDs as well. So what was the motivation to go on to graduate school?
Well, the bachelor's degree really just kind of gives you a flavor of what engineering and problem solving is about, but it didn't really give me the depth of knowledge that I really wanted to achieve. So graduate school seemed like it had to happen for me if I wanted to be able to satisfy this kind of curiosity. And so, yeah, I went on to University of Colorado at Boulder to do that. And the interesting thing is that, the consequence of me going to graduate school and really getting deeper into astrodynamics resulted in me, working for NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory as a spacecraft navigator, sending stuff to Mars.
Wow, that's so interesting. I did mention in the intro that you're a professor. Was it always the goal to stay in academia?
No. In fact, I felt a strong allergy to being an academic. I'm like, it's not for me. I want to leave school. I want to roll up my sleeves. I want to get out into the world and do stuff, get my hands dirty. And so that's what I did. So never in a million years, did I imagine that, later in my career and my life that I would be, coming back to academia and that academia would actually have a place for me. Because, there's a lot of rigidity within academia, and I'm just like very different.
Right, got you. So what was the motivation to go back to academia if it wasn't even in the plans?
Well, after being at NASA for about 6 years and then with the Air Force Research Laboratory for about a decade, there are problems that I wanted to solve that I wasn't really able to solve outside of academia, and I wanted to have some intellectual freedom to pursue some of these things and the latitude to do that. And so academia seemed like it could afford me the opportunity to do that. And luckily, I had kept up with publications and that sort of stuff to make myself competitive for an academic position. And yeah, and so that turned out to work out for me here at the University of Texas at Austin.
Yeah, people like you I always find rather interesting because, at least for what I understand, the majority of people who get these PhDs and go into academia, they or are in academia, is something they do right away. They don't necessarily go elsewhere and then come back. So it's always interesting to talk to people like yourself who went away for a while, but as you mentioned, who stayed competitive enough to be able to go back. And it's great that you were able to have that kind of flexibility. With the work that you do now as a professor, what is your research? What kind of research are you working on?
So the research that I'm working on is really trying to monitor, quantify, assess, predict behavior of human-made objects in space, mostly focused in things around Earth these days, and how we have a huge space garbage problem in that, in 1957, the world launched Sputnik, Soviet Union at the time, and now it's 2022. We're currently tracking like 50,000 objects ranging in size from a cell phone to the space station in Earth orbit, out of which like 5,000 are working and everything else is garbage. So like 90% of all the stuff that we track that humans are responsible for is trash. And so my research is really trying to focus on space environmentalism. What's contributing to this problem? Can we do things to mitigate this sort of stuff? Understand, the reason why this is occurring, and come up with possible solutions to help like flatten the curve on the spread of the garbage and that sort of thing.
Oh, wow. We need to get some bins up there and put all that space garbage in them.
There you go. There you go.
You're actually the first person I've spoken to on this topic of space garbage. It's really interesting to hear that so much of what's up there and what we're tracking is just junk, just up there. So I guess, is it difficult to get all the various, the pertinent countries on the same page as to what we should do about the space garbage problem?
Yeah. So, interestingly enough, one of the things that I've had, the honor to be able to do during my career is to, be on the U.S. delegation to the United Nations Committee on Peaceful Uses of Outer Space in Vienna. And I will say that in that venue, very recently, 93 countries by consensus signed an agreement on these are the things that we could do that should result in long-term sustainability of outer space. So at least they agreed to that. Now the question is, how are these countries interpreting that, implementing that? And that's the next phase. So that's what I'm focused on, is how are countries now moving to implement that within their own nations, and are they going to hold their own people, accountable and responsible for their behaviors in space?
I was just thinking, it's only a certain number of countries that have ever really sent anybody up into space. So of those 93 countries, is it possible that some of them would think, well, we weren't responsible for all that stuff ended up in space. Why is it my problem?
A lot. In fact, I would say most of the African countries that I speak to that have space programs or satellites have that sort of sentiment. Like, basically the United States, China, and Russia are the three culprits for most, 99% of the garbage up there. So why should other countries, have to be beholden or anything like that to that? And the unfortunate thing, Neil, right, is that, even if we go to a beach and the beach is littered by three people, we as people that want to enjoy the beach still have to live with that filth. And so if we just sit and say, hey, three people littered the beach and, I'm not going to do anything because it's not my problem. Well, it is everybody's problem, unfortunately. And somehow we all have to come together to try to solve this thing, even if three countries are mostly responsible for the garbage in space.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but I see what the African countries are saying too. It's just like, so we got to spend our resources to clean up a problem that wasn't ours.
Yeah, I know. And so it would be very interesting, Neil, if somehow the world could come together, US, China, and Russia could recognize the detriment of the burden of the debris on other countries that had nothing to do with causing this sort of stuff, and come up with some mechanism, some geopolitical thing. Maybe it's, credits or tariffs for import export, like somehow try to find ways to make this sort of thing equitable. That would be something that I'd be interested in seeing.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe the African countries would be open to that as well. But they'll also say, Russia, U.S., China, you did the most of this work. You're gonna have to do the most of this lifting. we'll pitch in a little bit. We'll put a little bit on it, but you're gonna have to do the majority of the work. But yeah, this is really interesting. The whole idea of there being this space garbage problem and countries coming together to try to solve it, because as you mentioned, yeah, three countries mainly are the culprits, but we all would suffer from, I guess, the issue moving forward. Moriba, I mentioned also in the intro that you're a founder. So not only are you a professor, but you kept a foot outside of, it seems like you kept a foot outside of academia and founded companies. So what was the motivation for doing that?
Well, one of the things that I said, the reason for coming back to academia was to have the latitude to be able to pursue a lot of these intellectual curiosities that I've had in my ideas and that sort of stuff, to have that freedom. But then with the things that I've been able to do within academia, what I've been able to put out there have been kind of demonstrations, like here's the art of the possible. So state of the possible isn't necessarily state of practice. And so then the question is, how do I take state of the possible to become state of practice? Well, that doesn't happen through academia. That happens through commercialization. It happens through private industry and these sorts of things. And one of the things that I've been really, feeling for some time now is that, we as a humanity are entering the next Renaissance. I'm going to call it like the Renaissance encore. And much like the original Renaissance, there was a flourishing of art and science. That sort of thing, we're ripe for that, now. And in the original Renaissance, that flourishing of art and science didn't happen because, all these different governments were like, funding grants and that sort of stuff to academics. It happened because one family came together and basically, strapped this on, invested in it, and participated in that. And that was the Medici family in Italy. And so one of the things that I've been looking for is, can I find my Medici equivalent within the space community to really take these ideas that I've been working on for some time, state of the possible, and make that into a state of practice to humanity's benefit. And this is when, I basically joined forces with Steve Wozniak and Alex Fielding to birth privateer space as the mechanism to do that.
Nice. So how is that, I guess, that endeavor, privateer space, going?
So far, it's going well. On March 1st, we came out of stealth mode. If people go to privateer.com, they're going to see the first thing that we've rolled out there. It's called Wayfinder, and title that because of indigenous cultures and the tradecraft of wayfinding, having a successful conversation with the environment in order to survive. So we want to have a successful conversation with, land, air, ocean, and space for humanity to survive. And that's what we're all about. And so, yeah, it's so far it's going well. We have a long road ahead of us, but we're very energized, enthusiastic, and we're all about really trying to connect to humanity, trying to recruit empathy and compassion from people to solve these problems.
More about a question that I forgot to ask you, but I'm really curious to get your take on is, on Earth, we have environmental problems, and you work on environmental problems in space. Is it difficult to convince other people that space should be our priority as opposed to what's going on planet Earth?
Absolutely. I think well, I've experienced it as being, monumentally challenging, and that's part of what I'm trying to fix. Can I become a good enough storyteller to tell this story about space environmentalism in such a way that lets people project themselves into this new perspective, empathy, and then from this place feel compelled to want to do something about it and not see it as somebody else's problem, but as their problem, and say, hey, here are the things that space is doing, or things that you enjoy on a daily basis, services and capabilities provided to you from things in space, and there's no protection of these things, and that might go away, and that would suck. So we should do something about it. That's what I'm trying to do. Yeah.
Nice. You know, also I mentioned in the intro, Moriba, that you're a TED fellow. Could you possibly talk about what exactly that means and how you became one?
Right. So in 2009, TED as an organization had the inaugural set of TED fellows. And my feeling is that this TED fellowship was really trying to be a mechanism to get folks from across humanity that never in a million years would make it to a TED conference and give a talk. So I was trying to recruit people with ideas worth sharing, worth spreading from across humanity, that you know, unlikely folks to just show up at a TED conference in Vancouver to do that sort of thing. So now it's like, you know, 2022 in 2019, I put in my application, and basically once a year they throw this global pool, and from the net they select 20 people. So 20 people are selected from across humanity to become TED fellows. And once you're in the fellowship, then you're kind of always in the fellowship. And I think at this point we're around 500 total fellows. These are people that are motivated by empathy and compassion to solve wicked problems across humanity that come from, you know, all parts of the globe. And it's really, I mean, it's very emotionally moving to me and meaningful, because to me, these TED fellows, I consider them like, you know, the true super friends. When I in my cohort in 2019, these other 19 people, I looked at them, I'm like, why am I here? Like, this person is really awesome, and they're doing this stuff to try to combat police brutality. And this person here is like working on engineering foods that basically bypasses the need to like actually grow and slaughter cattle and this sort of stuff. And this person, it's like each one was doing, you know, amazing stuff. And I was so honored to be selected to be in this pool. And yeah, so that's what the TED Fellowship's all about.
Nice. You know, Moriba, in your work as a professor, I'm sure you have to communicate with students. In your work with privateer space, I'm sure you have to communicate with other stakeholders about the importance of the work that you're doing. You know, as a TED fellow, I'm sure you have to communicate with, you know, broader audiences. And so the idea of communicating with others is something I'm guessing is of importance to you. But at what point did you realize that being adept at communicating with others could be of use to you?
You know, I began things, like I said, as a security guard. I think the first time that I recognized that communication was critical was trying to find a way into an aerospace engineering program, and that I needed to be, look, I was different. When I went to Embry-Riddle in Arizona, my own advisor advised me against trying to get into the university. He's like, oh, you know, kind of, he did the whole, you know, Yoda, you're too old to begin the training kind of thing. He's like, oh, you're too old to become an aerospace engineer. You're 23. You never took calculus in high school. You're probably not going to make it through this program. People much better and smarter than you don't make it. Like, it was horrible. And I recognized that unless I become effective at communicating things, and including my own needs and that sort of stuff, that I would not be able to successfully navigate through my own life to get to do the things that I felt compelled that I needed and wanted to do. So I think from very, very early on, I recognized that effective communication, yeah, it was basically critical to my own survival.
Nice. Is that, well, communicating with others, is that something you've always been good at? And if not, what'd you do to get better at it?
I don't think that I've always been good at it. practicing has definitely helped out quite a bit, and just making myself vulnerable, putting myself out there, in the genuine desire to just connect with people as a motivator. So yeah, it's just taking risks. I didn't get good at it until I was, willing to take and embrace the risks involved. And many times I felt ridiculed. Many times I have felt rejected in all sorts of ways and fashions. That sort of stuff happens to this day. But it's like, my thing is, I say, courage, this is my own definition, courage is the absence of paralysis in the presence of fear. I'm not fearless. I'm afraid of a lot of stuff, but I do try to be courageous. I try to move through that and not let fear stop me from doing things. And I think becoming effective at communication, for me, it requires courage.
I really like your definition of courage. I'm going to take it for myself too, but I'll give you credit whenever anyone asks me.
Oh yeah, absolutely, brother. Good.
Nice. So with the presentations that you have to do you have a process for I guess putting your presentations together? And if so, what is it?
I try to think about the end. I'm outcome driven. It's like, okay, here's this group of people. I have an opportunity. So that's the other thing too. I always view these sorts of exchanges that I have with others as exchanges. It's not one way. I see it as a two-way thing. I'm looking to learn something and get something from the people that I interact with. So it's really that sort of intellectually, emotionally, mentally transactional for me. I want this to be a give and take, not one way. And I ask myself, if this is successful, how's the world different or better as a result of this exchange? I start with that as the thing that I focus on. And then from there, I say, okay, given that this vision of how the world is positively different or better, how do I need to deliver this so that I maximize that as the outcome? That's how I go into all my presentations.
Nice. Do you ever get nervous before a presentation? And if so, how do you deal with your nerves?
Actually, I do still, and it's something that I actually enjoy. At first, it was something that was almost crippling. I would feel great anxiety, and I would actually, my body would start to tremble, before I take a stage and that sort of stuff. And that hasn't altogether disappeared, but now instead of allowing that to make me feel maybe a little bit inhibited or whatever, I actually look forward to the nervousness. It's like, this is cool. Yeah, I try to have fun with it, and I look forward with it. And it's like, when I'm sitting in that nervousness, I just kind of giggle a little bit, and I'm a bit giddy. I'm like, yeah, this nervous energy, it's really cool. And I'm going to harness and channel that as soon as I get to the stage, or this, that, or the other. So that's how I deal with it.
When it comes to nervousness, I truly believe that if you're not a little nervous before you give a presentation, you probably don't care about the outcome of that presentation. So the fact that you're nervous, given the importance of what you talk about, I think is a good thing. So thank you for being nervous.
Absolutely. No, thank you.
So last question, Moriba, if someone is listening or watching this interview or this conversation, and they want to get better or become more effective at public speaking, what would your number one tip for that person be?
Immerse yourself in the pool of humanity and have conversations that might make you feel like you're sitting in discomfort, and let yourself tolerate the discomfort, because growth will happen as a consequence.
Oh man, I'm a full believer in that. I actually just mentioned that in an interview that I did not too long ago. And I fully agree that growth comes from discomfort. So if you're avoiding discomfort, you're avoiding getting better, you're avoiding success. So yeah, I fully agree with you there. I lied, Moriba. This is my last question. How can people get in touch with you?
Look, I'm easy to find online. Moriba at moriba.com is the easiest way to get a hold of me. I do have an executive assistant, Haley DeVries. So actually the better way to get a hold of me is just to email team.moriba@outlook.com. And then you can get on my calendar and then we'll figure it out from there.
Wonderful. Well, everyone, that marks the end of another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson, founder of Teach the Geek. It's an online platform for science and engineering professionals. I'm also the creator of Teach the Geek to Speak. It's an online public speaking course, and you can learn about it at teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Until next time, take care and stay safe. Thanks, Moriba.
All right. Aloha. Thank you.